as an engineer just by mastering, and it translates to everything: recording, mixing, producing. It's changed everything about how I work and just how I sort of hear things and react. And a huge part of that is hearing other people's work at this like slightly unfinished stage and then bringing it to that final stage. It's just been incredibly eye-opening. I love that.
Yeah, that's so cool. I feel like it's so valuable to learn mastering, even if you don't want to do mastering, because it I guess it'll show you what the difference between a final product is and a not final product is, and just getting understanding of that, like you're saying.
Yeah.
It is interesting though, because when we reference tracks, when we're mixing, we're referencing masters.
I know, right?
We're not referencing mixes. Have you found that mixes are getting hotter, mixes are coming off? There's like less to do already at the mastering stage because of that, or on the other hand, maybe people, there is a difference that and people just like, this is a mix, and that we're waiting for that last 5-10% or whatever it is.
It's so all over the place. Yeah, some people adapt that. Some people, it's so baked when I get it. They basically just want their reference back with the appropriate tags and trims, and everywhere in between. So to me, it doesn't really matter. I think it's part of my job, and it's part of what's exciting about it is I don't know what my job's going to look like when I get in for the day. Some mastering projects are going to be super involved and really hands-on, digging deep, bringing out all the tricks. Others are just get in and out as transparently as possible. And I think those cues are really obvious in the mixes, and how they come to me, how much, how dynamic they are, how, that's a tough thing to describe. I use the word baked a lot. Like sometimes it just feels like there's no room to move. And to me, that's a really good indicator that I'm not supposed to.
That's so interesting. Wow. I try to understand what that means. Like what would make something baked as opposed to unbaked? Is it like, I don't know, amount of transients? Is it like, yeah.
I mean, if I was gonna break that down, it's probably like the number of limiters used in the process, not necessarily the final limiting, because most people take off their final limiter before. Well, is that true? Anyway, most people
apparently not anymore.
No, a lot of people try to adhere.
From what I'm understanding,
yeah,
I always take it off.
Yeah, I made that mistake one time as like in one of my earlier engineer produced mix scenarios where I was just like way too used to hearing it, and I mixed into a limiter and I didn't realize how hard I was mixing into that limiter. And then I took that limiter off and sent it to mastering. It was an expensive mastering job. And I got it back and I was like, oh. And then I was like, why does it sound like this? And then I was like, oh. Because I took my limiter off and it changed my entire mix. So whatever. My advice to anybody who's, spent their entire process mixing into this one limiter, maybe to keep it on. I don't know. I digress. And
that's interesting.
Partially joking, but partially not joking. Sorry, what was I supposed to be talking about?
You would recommend
baked.
Yeah. Well, so you would recommend, because you probably should leave on whatever you're mixing into, maybe it's better to not mix into a limiter.
That is what I have adapted. Yes. That was the lesson that I took away for sure. I was like, okay, because it was one of my first pop productions, and it was all electronic, and everything in that world is pretty loud. So just throughout the whole tracking process, I had this limiter on, and that just stayed. And then I mixed into that limiter. I just did everything into that limiter. So I really should not have removed that limiter when it was time to go to mastering, because that had been a part of the entire process. So then moving forward, I just decided I don't want that to be a part of my entire process anymore. I would rather make it loud before, the tuba stage, which is just a combination of, EQ and dynamics down the line, right? Starting at square one, just making sure everything is as loud and placing, controlling the dynamics, because over compressing doesn't necessarily make something loud. Obviously, it is the dynamics are a part of what makes something feel loud. So just getting it right piece by piece as I don't know, as one builds. I lost my analogy. It was a puzzle analogy of some kind.
No, it's all good. I think I got it. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I I've had to send off, like once I had to send off like some stems for mastering instead of like the mix. And it bothered me so much because, I'm heavily relying on my stereo bus compressor, right? So it's like
absolutely.
Once I'm sending like, the bass separate from the rest of the track, it's like it's not the same mix anymore because the compressor's not reacting the same way.
Yeah.
So like my stereo bus is, don't touch that, leave it.
Exactly. And that's a lot of people. I feel like most, especially mixing engineers, like have that thing that they mix into. And if you take that away, even if it's something silly like limiter, it's just not the same mix anymore. People have their tricks like side chaining the key input on their stereo bus compressor to make their stems sound more like a piece of that puzzle when everything's playing all at once. But
interesting.
It's still not the same. It's just not, because gain staging is a thing. Even in the digital realm. Anyway, I guess that is the point of this podcast, is to get pretty nerdy, isn't it?
We could get as nerdy as you're comfortable getting, or whatever. I love it, but I also like talking about stories and what moves people. So it's all good.
We'll walk the line.
It's all on the table.
Nice.
Do you have any like go-to tools that you find yourself coming back to on like every master?
Yeah. Well, our chain is very specific. So in the actual mastering studio, if I'm talking about the analog gear that we have, we're just working with a few key pieces, a couple of EQs, and a couple of compressors, all super, super, super musical, a bajillion tubes. And for me, the way that I work into that rig, it's kind of just like I'll do all my surgical stuff in the box, and I definitely have my go-to plugins for that. And then when I get to the analog realm, if I get to the analog realm, because some things don't want that treatment, but if and when I get there, it's about sort of accentuating the frequency ranges in a song that I feel want to be sweetened almost. I'm trying to describe a very abstract thing that I do generally. I just close my eyes and I like dance. I just feel it out. I've done all my, by the time when I'm doing the analog pass, I've generally done all my housekeeping. So it's really like, okay, like, does this song, do you want to feel this song? Where do you want to feel this song? What instrument is doing that? Like, is it the drums? Do we need that like low mid and the drums punching us in the gut? Or is it the sub? Do we need to feel that like that hum and that shake? And just like, is it about that extreme low end, or is it about that expensive high end? So when I get to the analog rig, that's generally what I'm using those key pieces for.
You're basically trying to infuse that saturation back into the mix, probably. Maybe where you maybe cut out some of the bad information beforehand.
Totally. Yeah.
I'm like reading between the lines.
Yeah. Well, I don't.
But it's feel.
It's pretty abstract on the analog gear for me. I keep it. Yeah. I keep it all about feel. It's just like, yeah, it's a thing I've only tried to describe it a couple of times now, but if I've cleaned up all of the various frequency ranges in the box and it's generally like everything sounds good to me, I use the analog gear to pull the magic out of that goodness.
Yeah.
And that can, sometimes that's about controlling the dynamics in certain frequency ranges, which a few of our pieces of gear are really good at. Sometimes this is about boosting. Sometimes it's about cutting. But all the stuff that we have in the studio is like, it's again, just like super vibey and super musical. So it's just about incorporating some really key small changes to bring some magic to it, basically.
Nice.
And then okay. Oh, right. And then we may as well just drop the NIF. So NIF is it's the guy's name. but it's the company.
Yes.
I was going to say, Yanti. I think Nif is his last name. I'm not sure. You might have to edit that part out again.
Let's see. One second. I'm looking it up. Nif Gear?
Nif.
NIF?
Yeah, NIF. I had never heard of it before Brock, and I will never be able to live without those pieces of gear. Again, the X of the E-tip and the Veramu that man makes are the most magical boxes I have ever heard.
Wow.
In my life. And then the newest addition is the Magic Death Eye compressor.
I've heard about it, yeah. It's like a legendary thing, right?
I don't know. It is now. It was pretty new to us. And I think, did we get the first one? Ooh, I might be overstepping a little bit there. But we got a pretty early version of it. Again, just a guy, Ian, who makes incredible gear. And it's beautiful. And it's one of the, like, if I could just have that, like, I don't know, I carry it around with me, I would use it in absolutely every single aspect of music making. I would mix into it. I would record with it. I master with it. It sounds so good. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
And I'm fortunate I don't really have to like usually it's just kind of an in or out situation for the analog because we really have, or Brock has really curated an incredible chain. There's nothing superfluous. You have just the right tools. There's a couple of key digital pieces too that nobody cares about. Converter suite.
Yeah.
You know, so that's just kind of like, where do I want the magic and what's going to do it? And then for the more technical stuff, I'm obsessed with all the DMG plugins.
People have told me about great stuff about it.
Crazy good.
What is that, Limitless or something?
Limitless, yeah, that's my go-to limiter. I would use Ozone a lot too. Let's be real. Everybody does. Doesn't matter who you are. Everyone uses Ozone. Mixing, mastering, producing. I use that limiter a lot too, Maximizer. But yeah, DMG, Limitless, Equilibrium, and Multiplicity are the ones that we're rocking on the regular.
Cool.
Yeah, just beautiful. I say easy now. It was a little bit, it can be kind of intimidating and tricky to set up because it's so customizable. But now it's just easy, effortless.
System
beautiful.
Is down.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool plugin.
So, this is, kind of regarded, in the realm of gear and stuff, mastering is known for like really expensive gear. Like you just mentioned, all these amazing, like unique boutique pieces of gear.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the bare minimum that someone would need just to get up and running mastering?
A computer, a DAW.
And you could say gear, and you could say also monitors or whatever.
Oh man, I didn't even talk about the great loves of my life, the monitors. Thank you. What was I even thinking?
I saw something on the internet that with you professing your love for ATCs.
Yeah, all day, every day. Those are my besties. I love those monitors so much. Even before I worked at CPS, I didn't even realize that Brock was rocking those. They are my most beloved and coveted monitors of all time. The ATC 100s. Actually, almost everything that ATC makes. I don't think I've heard anything I didn't like by them. Very important, very key to my workflow. I have, before the ATCs, all I listened to was NS10s pretty much my entire life. We have Barefoots at Monarch. I know, right? So I definitely have a burning hole at 2K in my hearing. And I love my NS10s. Don't get me wrong. I love them. But the ATCs are a real treat to work on. They just open everything up. That is for sure a monitoring situation that speaks to you is the most important thing. I would argue that I do just as much quality work on the ATCs as I do on the Focal Clears, the headphones that I use for mastering. Don't judge me by my HG 280s that I'm rocking for this podcast.
No worries. You can see me. I'm just wearing the standard Sonys.
Okay, nice.
I don't have any fancy headphones. You know,
Oh man,
nor
I've never
monitors yet.
seen.
I'm currently saving up some money to get better monitors.